Hello everyone. Recently I discovered this series called Sins of the Past by Spooked Forky, or just Forky on YouTube. I actually found it on the Dreamcore wiki page, which has a couple other things that I might want to look into in the future. But this is a relatively small series that I think will have a pretty big impact on the future of the internet horror genre. So I will go into detail on that later, as well as ask the creator of this series a couple questions about how they made it, what their inspiration was, etc, etc. But of course, I will go through and analyze the series first. I recommend you check it out yourself. As I mentioned before, this isn't a super popular series, so go show the creator some love, and with that being said, let's get into it. The first video on this channel is titled Interference. It takes place on February 20th, 1977. In the closed captions of the beginning of this video, it reads, Bill, Settle, and King. King is a character that will be important later on, and Bill is the father of Charlotte Settle, who is kind of the main character of the series. We hear Bill say,
I just want to find out about my daughter's dreams, and if it's not you controlling them, then who the hell is it?
And then King responds,
You should know her very well. Why don't we take a walk together? Just you and I. Down Charlotte's Hall of Dreams.
We then enter Charlotte's dream, but before we get into the actual dream, we hear this. So yeah, that's a great way to start the video, isn't it? Now this is probably Nina or Tia, two characters that come up later. There are a lot of characters in this, so bear with me here. But it's not super important right now, so I'll get into that later. Now I want to say before I get into this dream stuff, this perspective that we're looking through is Charlotte's perspective. But for some reason I said the protagonist, which I use later in the video to refer to the point of view we see in the second video, so don't let that confuse you. The protagonist explores this sort of fake arcade area, sees a picture of what they think looks like Tia, so that makes me think that this character right here is probably Tia. Still not 100% sure. Then this completely unintelligible text pops up. And at first I thought this was just bad video making, but then I look in the captions and it literally just... I can't say literally. But then I look in the captions and it just says unintelligible... I can't talk! The captions just say unintelligible text, so obviously this wasn't supposed to be read. But the character responds, Of course I do. It eats away at me, knowing I could have prevented all of this. Probably implying some sort of guilting by the red text that pops up. The protagonist finds a Township ID card. Township is a company that will come up later. Then they come across some sort of portal that just sucks them in. And text reads, Your father will wake up soon, so I'll leave you with one last gift. A new character is introduced, and she says that she can feel the protagonist dying, and says they will be reborn together. This character is likely Tia, based on the dialogue afterwards. Congrats, you got the rose. How do you feel? After learning about Tia, I'm sorry. Your dad is coming soon. Until next time. King is gone. It's just me now. Earlier you talked about who was controlling the dreams with him, yes? Do you get it now, Bill? This is a tale brought onto you by your own sins. I better not see you cry now. A lot of random images and a happy birthday song. I don't think this has much importance. We then see a character who is Tia. I know that this character right here is Tia, based on just how they look, because this is how they're drawn in like every single episode. They're talking to a Mr. Lewis about an argument they had with Charlotte and how they are tired of being reliant on Charlotte. The protagonist is then given the message, "You can't bring us back, so why do you go on? You've suffered enough." And then is given the option to either stop or continue. The protagonist, of course, chooses to continue. Continue dreaming. Now, I would explain what I think this episode means in the greater context of the story, but I think it would make more sense if I continued and pieced things together from there, because a lot of them are interwoven in weird ways. And the description for this episode is, nonsensical clips crudely put together in a short span of time can only be described as an interference. That's the title of the episode! What? The second video in this series is titled Township.mp4, and it's in a new style. Digital! We are introduced to what I think is a new character who is our protagonist in this. I haven't been able to fully connect them to any other characters in the series right now, so they could be completely different. It appears there's some sort of private investigator or investigative journalist, and they open up a file on their computer that says, "Township has little to nothing to do with the disappearances in Windsor. It is unlikely that there is a larger conspiracy at play when it comes to this company. Please direct all efforts toward frequent visitors of their location. Thank you for understanding." The protagonist then opens up Firefox and goes to the Township website, which, if you remember, Township was briefly mentioned in the first video with the ID card that Charlotte picks up. The protagonist clicks on news and the page says, "We didn't know you were a football fan, Ruthie." The protagonist is not Ruthie, I'm here to say that. Ruthie is dead by this point in the story. Just an FYI, we'll get into that later. There's a lot of references to stars and this star-shaped person. I don't know exactly what correlation that has yet, but we'll see. They then go to the contact page. A chat box opens up with someone labeled as online. The protagonist starts talking with an employee to the Township website, and the protagonist explains that they are looking for information about the thing down in Windsor. The protagonist clicks on a link called Player of the Week, which takes them to a page with a random player listed named Char, something like that. They then press Make a Request Here, which leads to a directory page. On the directory page, she goes... Ooh, I said she. We don't know if it's she or not. On the directory page, the protagonist clicks on a link titled What is an Umbra? And there's a lot of text here, so I'm just going to summarize it. Basically, Umbras are entities believed to explain many paranormal sightings throughout history, encompassing phenomena like demons, spirits, ghosts, etc. These entities are described as being obsessed with the idea of evolution and perfection, primarily on a physical level. They often attach themselves to objects of personal significance close to their place of death, such as family relics or gifts. Umbras adapt their forms to their surroundings, utilizing nearby materials to construct a more humanoid appearance in their pursuit of perfection. Like, for example, if they died around wood, their form would become more wood or tree-like. The protagonist then runs into a login screen, and the employee, for some reason, just decides, yeah, I'm gonna give this random person confidential company information, and just gives them the login info. Once the protagonist logs in, the page shows some pretty important story information, plus some information given in the chat with the employee. I wrote down a couple notes here about what I read. The account used to log in is Charlotte's account, you know, the person whose dream we were in the first episode. Tia is Charlotte's little sister. Ruthie is Charlotte's love, which I'm assuming just means romantic partner. Charlotte was presumed dead, which is interesting because the others were confirmed dead. It is assumed that Tia was killed by someone luring her with the promise of helping her in her acting career, which is something that Tia aspired to be and Charlotte encouraged. Charlotte was known to be annoying and very overprotective of her sister. Ruthie is learned to be the sister of King. King, there's a lot of information about this, but remember King was the character that was talking to Bill in the very beginning of Interference.
You should know her very well. Why don't we take a walk together? Just you and I. Down Charlotte's Hall of Dreams.
King killed their parents before being shot in the head by Ruthie. Ruthie then received a large inheritance from her parents. The protagonist then goes to Tia's page and clicks on an image that leads to a strange video. Now, I still don't know what this video means. Obviously, the birds are supposed to represent people. I don't know who they are. I don't know who's the one presenting the video. We do hear, I think, Tia say, "Charlotte, do you hear me?" And also, the protagonist only watches about 40 seconds of this video, despite it being 2 minutes long. So there may be some content in the future that comes out that more goes in depth on this video, but I still don't exactly know what it means. The protagonist asks about what the video was about, what they just saw, to no response. But before the protagonist asks that, the employee says that making video games for the town residents was a pretty common thing, which, again, comes up in a later video. And then...
Throwing flashbang!
Ah! God, what the... Oh my god. Now, I think I mentioned earlier that the protagonist might be a investigator of some sort, and the files on their computer definitely support this theory. The protagonist then deletes a file labeled Township, inferring that they're not too interested in the case anymore, or maybe they're scared to dive deeper into it for some reason. They then create a new text file that I can't read the name of, unfortunately, but then grab the Windsor file and put it into their unopened cold cases folder. So maybe they're still into the Windsor case a little bit. They just don't think Township, the company, has anything to do with it. And then this happens. So obviously some kind of force doesn't want the protagonist to be investigating this. There's something suspicious going on here. And then the description just says, most of this site is completely broken. This felt like a waste of time. Which is probably from the protagonist's perspective.
I'm a bad boy doing good things. Got a lemonade with chicken wings. With a bad bitch, she's quite thick.
The third video in the series is titled Clarity. In the beginning, we are reintroduced to Tia, and Tia goes about telling us what happened the day she died. She starts off with her waking up and going to school. She tumbles into school and gets laughed at by her classmates. While she is talking to one of her classmates, the camera falls over and she states, "My world, my rules," showing that whatever we are watching, she has full control over what happens. So this might be an unreliable narrator type thing. I don't know. She continues the story and we are introduced to a guy named Kurt and this bully character who stops Tia from leaving just to make fun of her. And then Tia somehow forgets she's blind and then's like, "Oh yeah, I'm blind." And Everything goes black. Then we hear a lot of strange noises. And see someone dragging Tia through a snowy forest when it cuts to Charlotte's perspective. Charlotte calls Ruthie asking if she has seen Tia and talks about an argument they had.
Did Tia stop by your place last night? We got into a bit of an argument and she just stormed off.
Tia? No, she hasn't come here. I haven't seen her in a while. Did you try calling Jay?
Tia is missing. February 6, 1975.
Don't you feel silly? Don't you feel stupid? Don't you feel a little ashamed?
Harmony's room. Someone is obviously hanging, and this text appears. It is cut off on the sides, but I think it might read, "She stood at her dead cold feet for hours before finally calling for help. When the help arrived, it was chalked down to nothing but service brought on from losing her youngest child. Charlotte would keep the teddy bear unable to do anything, as she failed. Charlotte was the one who let it happen. She was the one who let Tia die, and Nina too." I think it might say 2 at the end, I don't know. And then mood change, clouds in the sky. Oh look, an angel, it's Nina. Oh right, Nina's dead, that's right. A cop is asking Charlotte questions about the murder of Nina and Tia. The cop accuses Charlotte of killing them, which that's just bad cop behavior. And Charlotte explains what happened with Tia and their argument.
I will tell you is a little bit about what we argued about. Tia had a rough day of school that day.
This guy right here, one of my earliest followers.
Perspective shift. Harmony's judgment. I told you before not to continue. Well, I'll show you something nice. Harmony is entered as the name to a prompt of a video game, but when it is entered in, the name changes to Lewis. A character named Lewis is talking with Tia. Tia talks about her fight with Charlotte, and Lewis says, "Why don't we talk about this in the back room?"
Backrooms reference, guys. That's a backrooms reference.
Tia then responds, "Isn't that where Nina died?" Time skip. Tia's dead. Also, while all this is happening, we see a township logo in the bottom right of the screen, so this is probably one of those township video games that was mentioned in the last video. I think Harmony is the character that is watching all this go down, as someone does start crying after all that, and Harmony is linked as a voice actor in the credits, which, speaking of the credits, the episode is labeled Sins of the Past 2, and this is also supported by the description that says, "Sometimes clarity after an interference, the name of the first episode, can be a blessing. Other times it feels like a sack full of info being slammed against your head over and over and over again." So this is probably part 2 in the timeline, maybe, or maybe Township isn't considered a part of the story. I don't know. But there is actually an after credit scene, like a Marvel movie. It does go by pretty fast, but I managed to translate all the text. "Do you want to dream again? Leave me alone. What choice do I have? You're playing a dangerous game. Nina know something. Because I killed them? ? So that's a bit of extra info. I don't know how important it is, but it is info that exists. Video 4 is titled Beginnings, and it is the longest video in the series so far. It's 20 minutes long. I don't know how long this segment of my video is gonna be. Probably around 10 minutes long. So just hold in there, just stick in there with me. You gotta get through this Ro-Meister video or else you die. Now we are seeing through the perspective of Tia being dragged through the forest. She doesn't seem to understand what is going on, as she asks Lewis, who is dragging her, while she is bleeding, if she can go back and get a coat or say bye to Charlotte.
To get some sweatpants and a coat. Why do you keep whispering to yourself, Lewis?
So she doesn't seem to have an understanding of the situation that's going on. She then gets thrown into a hole with what I think is a dead body right next to her. And then it cuts to someone talking about living together forever, which is similar to what Tia said in the first video to what I thought was Charlotte, but it could be someone different considering that this voice is masculine.
Promised me that we'd live forever. Together.
We then cut to a friend group with Jay, Ruthie, Charlotte, and Nina. They're playing Truth or Dare, and Nina asks Charlotte if she likes Ruthie in the special way, and Charlotte, in response, dares Nina to go into the back room for 30 minutes with the lights off. And if you've been paying attention to the last parts, we know what happens to Nina there. Then someone, probably Tia, shows up and says she won't show us what happens after the dare, but she'll show us something else. We are now in a video game, probably made by the Township Company, of Charlotte walking down a path with many different characters. I don't think any of these characters, besides the last one, are really worth mentioning. There is this one guy that says, "I hate this place, I'm surrounded by idiots. Why did she have to put us here together? And why couldn't I get a cell to myself?" Which is a little interesting. Maybe these are spirits trapped in here. Purple guy! Then Charlotte comes across a big, night-looking creature trapped in a cell, and this creature introduces himself as King.
Charlotte, it is a lovely name. My name, it was King, I suppose.
King then asks about his sister Ruthie to Charlotte. Charlotte says she knows Ruthie and that they're actually really good friends. King finds joy in this situation and decides to show Charlotte what happened to him, his sister, and their parents. He introduces the scene by having Ruthie wake up and find her parents dead in their room. And then when King introduces himself to the story, he calls himself her savior. Ruthie then notices King holding a bloody knife and puts 2 and 2 together and gets 4.
5 days in a row.
And then realizes, my brother killed my parents! Ruthie chooses to defend herself and cuts King, which is strange because in Township.mp4, the second video, it says that she shot King in the head. So there's something a little different there. Who knows, maybe she cut King and then shot him, but I feel like in that state of mind, you wouldn't want to shoot your brother. And then after King tells his story, he escapes the cage. We then change scenes and see Charlotte and her friends Jay and Ruthie sneaking into an arcade when they hear Happy Birthday Lullaby music, and I think it makes them fall asleep. We then look into the dreams of each of the friends. Jay dreams about asking out Charlotte, who in response says, she doesn't say anything. She actually gets crushed by a meteorite. The 2 next scenes, I don't know if they're dreams of Charlotte's or if they're just something added in there. One of them says, "Come fight me, God," and then a giant fan blows her away. And then the next one, Charlotte sees the portal from the first video and then just starts to bleed when she falls over and gets dragged away. The friends then wake up in a dark room with their kidnapper, who looks an awful lot like Lewis. The kidnapper tells Jay to kill Ruthie or else he will kill all 3 of them. Jay tries to outsmart the kidnapper by throwing a rock at him, but the kidnapper shoots Charlotte in response. Charlotte is still alive though, don't you guys worry, she's somehow survived that. Jay then realizes he doesn't have a choice and kills Ruthie as the kidnapper drags away Charlotte. Charlotte wakes up in a snowy forest, just like the one we saw Tia being dragged in. She sees Jay lying on the floor unconscious, but resists the urge to kill him after he killed her love. She then tries to make her way home and sees this rat that starts to taunt her about not killing Jay.
Right, I'll tell you what, you fat little...
And then she just f***ing eats it.
Yummy.
So that's kind of weird. Then she finds this TV. Her head goes in the TV, and then a bunch of weird stuff happens. I think most of this is just weird for weird's sake, not really any interesting story developments with this. But in the credits, we do see and talk to Tia, but again, nothing really story important comes out of this. And that's it for video 4. Now these next 2 videos are only 31 seconds each, and I only think one of them really has important information, but I'm still going to analyze both of them. So this first one is titled Illusion of Choice. It starts with some unintelligible text next to a hospital bed, and then some blue text pops up that says, "Behind you!" The character looks behind them and sees a star. The star, and I'm assuming it's the star because of the red box around it, says, "You don't have a choice, so get that out of your head. I'll make you live. You don't get to selfishly die here. You will know the truth." The description reads, Charlotte Dream 1, January 15, 1977. Now I don't really know how significant that date is, but there is a comment that says, "Interesting thing to note is that this event takes place on the same day Charlotte apparently broke her promise, January 15th, 1977. I couldn't really find anything about that I looked back through, but I don't know, maybe I missed something. I think it's also important to mention that considering this is Charlotte's dream, the star is probably some sort of entity that wants whoever killed Tia and her friends to be put to justice somehow. Maybe it's malevolent because of the way it talks. I don't think that, because it says it wants Charlotte to know the truth. So I think it's more of a benevolent being than a malevolent being. This next 30-second video is titled Memories or Dreams. Based on the description, this video shows Charlotte Dream 3. Whoa, we skipped part 2. It shows what are seemingly moments in Charlotte's life, and at the end it asks, memories or dreams? And to that I say, why not both? I don't think this one has as much importance to the story as the last one. It's mostly just diving deeper into Charlotte's past. It doesn't really dive that deep, but it's something, I guess. Alright, we are finally at the last episode of the series to date. This video actually came out as I was taking notes, so I'm ahead of the curve here. But let's move on. This video is of Charlotte talking to either herself or the audience or someone, and she is talking about how she is trapped in her dreams. She sees her mother in her dreams and says that her mother can only exist in her dreams, implying that dead people can somehow exist in people's dreams in this universe. She then mentions someone putting her in this situation, being trapped in her dreams, and whenever she feels like she's gonna wake up, she goes into another nightmare. And the person that's shown, or the face that's shown, looks an awful lot like Lewis. Then there's a mention of the 2 people behind the arcade. I think one of these people is Tia, and I don't know who the other person is, because when we see Tia get thrown into the grave, we see her with an already dead person. So this implies that someone else died before Tia did and is now in that grave behind the arcade. The reason I know this is Tia's grave is because Charlotte says and shows that it is a grave in the snow, and Charlotte mentions rebirth, which is only really mentioned with Tia in mind. Who this third person is, again, I don't know. But maybe we'll figure that out later in the story. And at the end of the video, Charlotte mentions always seeing a face at the end of her dreams. Nina's face. Charlotte likely feels guilty for putting Nina in the back room and basically getting her killed. And, you know, obviously Charlotte didn't intend to kill Tia, but, you know, 30 minutes is a little long. Anyway, that's it for the last video in this series. But don't leave just yet. We got an interview coming up with the creator. We got an analysis and timeline construction. There's a lot going on here, so stick around for that. Grab a snack. I don't know. Please don't leave. I need your watch time. So now I'm going to do a general analysis of the dynamics and timeline of the series to date. Sorry if my voice sounds a little weird right now. I am feeling a little bit ill, but I hit 300 subscribers, so I gotta get this video out for my 300 fans. Anyway, first, the dynamics. Charlotte is the main character. We see through her dreams most of the story, and most of the plot revolves around her. Tia is Charlotte's little sister. Bill is Charlotte and Tia's father. Harmony is Charlotte and Tia's mother. Probably. I'm basing this off video 3 clarity because in Harmony's room there is a dead body and it is mentioned that the person did this to themselves because of losing their youngest child right after Tia died. It's in Harmony's room. Harmony just played that game. Ruthie is Charlotte's friend and later romantic partner. King is Ruthie's brother. Nina and Jay are Charlotte's friends. Kurt is probably Tia's friend. I don't think he's that important in the story right now, but he was given a name, so I decided to mention him. And then finally, Lewis, the main bad guy aside from King. I don't really know what his connection is to the rest of the characters. Okay, I'm recording this while editing, and I just find this. In the same room my father killed you, Tia. So we know Lewis killed Tia. So we definitely know it wasn't Tia's father that killed her, obviously. Because then his name would be Bill as well. And this hand is stabbing Nina. I don't know exactly what that means. A hand has a glove on. So it could be Nina's father. Lewis could be Nina's father. Nina is someone's father. I was just looking through the transcript of this, which I didn't do in my actual analysis of this episode. But that is some important information for the future. Very important. Now for the timeline. A lot of these things that I'm going to mention don't have specific dates to them, but I can guess the general area of when they happened. So I'm just going to go based off that. The first most important thing that happens is King killing his parents and then Ruthie eventually killing him. On September 14th, 1975, Charlotte tells Nina to go into the back room for a dare, where Nina eventually dies. Now, on what is probably November 15th, 1975, Charlotte has her argument with Tia. Tia leaves school early and gets killed by Lewis. The reason I say this is probably the 15th is because on November 16th, 1975, there might be a 7 there. I'm pretty sure, based on the timeline, it would make sense. Charlotte calls Ruthie, asking about Tia, talking about their argument the other day. Then, Harmony plays the video game. February 6, 1976, Harmony. Then the police interview Charlotte. December 26, 1976, Charlotte plays the game and learns what happened to King and Ruthie. Ruthie, Jay, and Charlotte get kidnapped, where Ruthie dies and Jay and Charlotte get terribly injured. Jay might have died in the woods, as he is not mentioned in the future of the story, but again, we might see in the future if he comes up later. January 15th, 1977 is Charlotte Dream 1. January 21st, 1977 is Charlotte Dream 3. We might see a second one come out soon. February 20th, 1977, Interference happens. Bill Settle and King explore Charlotte's dream. And finally, Township.mp4 takes place, which is Agent Millie's involvement. Now that is what I know of the timeline as of now, but I have a couple other things to mention that I did not mention in the timeline or the explanation, so I'm going to do that right now. First thing I want to bring up is Umbras. What do they have to do with the story? Maybe there is a connection to Rebirth, but considering what Charlotte said about her mom being trapped in her dream, I assume dead people exist in dreams, but I guess it could be multiple scenarios. Maybe Umbras are just a red herring. I don't know. We'll have to see in the future. In Township.mp4, we see the player of the week with the name Char, I think is just short for Charlotte. The picture used for her is the same picture that is seen at the end of Clarity with the phrase, "because I killed them." Now the two birds, I'm still not 100% sure what they mean. The bodies behind the arcade mentioned in Sins of the Past could both be Tia and Nina, which I did not consider before, but now it makes sense considering they both died in the same area. And the two birds could be them. I'm not so sure about that one, but the idea of them being rebirthed together could be a hint to that. And finally, who the hell is the star in Illusion of Choice? Because there's this star just talking to Charlotte in her dream, telling her, "You need to know the truth." And do they have a connection to the star on the Township website? I get that that's like kind of a stretch, but it is a connection, with Star talking to someone. Who knows?
The hell are you supposed to be?
But now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the interview. Alright, Forky, nice to meet you finally. Interestingly enough, you were actually my first follower on Twitter. Go follow Ro-Meister on Twitter, by the way.
This is not Forky speaking, this is an AI voice that is reading off of the responses Forky gave via Twitter.
Oh, don't be embarrassed, Forky. You're not an AI voice.
Shut the fuck up and ask the questions.
You got it. I'll do that. First off, what inspired you to start this series and how did you come up with the concept for it?
Honestly, I was originally inspired many years ago to make content by Baphomet on YouTube. The concept for it came from my own experience with dreams and lost jointly. It's a very personal project to me for that reason.
Oh, that's interesting. I actually figured you had some inspiration from Baphomet-kun, or however you pronounce that. And I'm glad this project means something to you. But were there any other projects you worked on before starting this series?
Nothing as organized as SOTP, no. Just one-shot videos that I posted on Instagram and Tumblr that are gone to time now. Maybe I'll drag them up from my files, if anyone wants to see them, but they're awful.
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing them. It'd kind of be cool to see where you came from. What was the thought process behind the way you organized the series? Was it planned beforehand, or did you develop the story as you went along?
I planned everything beforehand, with very few things being added as I went on, because it made more sense. I have a 70-page document with the entire story of Sins of the Past planned out.
Wow, 70 pages. That's whew. You really thought this thing out. How much focus do you put into this series? Is it like your main project or more of a side thing?
It's certainly my main project, but I don't put as much focus into it as I do like school, for example. I wish I could focus on it entirely, but unfortunately life calls. I have a couple side projects in the works though.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it's cool to hear you got some side projects coming along. How long does it usually take for you to make each video?
It takes a few months each, usually. I like to take my time with it, as not to stress myself out.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm sure it's not super easy having to animate all that all the time. But I'm sure the 70-page document helps. What programs do you and your teammates use?
I use After Effects. Iron uses Blender. I occasionally use Blender as well.
Okay, yeah. Actually, I used After Effects for the first time on this video. My spinning Ro-Meister head came from After Effects, which it's not anything crazy, but it's a start, you know? What kind of audience feedback have you received, and how has it influenced the series?
Largely completely positive feedback actually. It's nice to see, and all the negative criticism I've received has been really constructive and nice for the most part. I try to take into account more technical things like feedback on audio mixing and things of that nature, but criticisms on the story itself I think I would ignore, if I got any.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if you have this 70-page document, you're not going to want to change that up, because I'm sure it'll just mess more things up. Speaking of mess-ups, were there any hiccups in the series, or parts that you feel you could have executed better?
Absolutely. In beginnings, the part where the masked man has Ruthie and Jay and Charlotte in that room and forces Jay to kill Ruthie. I wish I hadn't made him so outwardly crazy, or, as some people have described it, Joker crazy. I was really testing the reins on how far I could go with showcasing his character, and I pushed it a bit much, I think.
Yeah, honestly, it didn't put me off too much, because I kind of thought of him more as a supernatural type. I don't know why. There was nothing really in the series that said that, aside from the whole rebirth thing. But I can see why you don't like that much. Do you have a favorite part of your series?
Oh yes, the entire segment on Ruthie's backstory was so fun to make. I felt like I was making a floor plan but with After Effects 3D engine. I also think it came out really well, partially as a result to the brilliant voice acting done by King's voice actor.
Yeah, honestly, that was one of my favorite parts too. I did already say that I thought it was weird that Ruthie cut King instead of shooting him like it said in Township.mp4, but I'm sure you have some sort of explanation for that, or maybe it's a little mistake, and that's fine. Everyone makes mistakes. Speaking of the voice actors, how did you get into contact with the other creators and voice actors in your series?
A lot of the voice actors in my series were friends with me prior, but people like Iron I actively reached out to, after taking interest in their art. His style is just so cool. Please follow him at Multi-Eyed Kevin on Twitter.
Yeah, I'll certainly do that. I love how the series looks. The art style is really great throughout most of the series. There's not a lot of problems I see with it. And most of the stuff that is unconventional actually helps with the story and just the immersion in it, which I really like. How long did you plan on continuing this series, and is there anything upcoming that you're excited about?
I plan on continuing this series by releasing 2 more episodes for this first half for Season 1, and then releasing about the same amount for Season 2 or the second half. The finale will be split up into 2 parts the way I see it right now. Subject to change though.
Oh, that's cool. I'm glad you have this all planned out. Make it more organized. I can't wait to see what comes out of this. And finally, are there any other projects you are planning on doing in the future, whether it be with another creator or just your own thing?
I plan on doing another series, yes. But it's not at all like Sins of the Past, far more live action based, and it was something I had written for years but never had the experience or means to make it. Don't want to give too much away, but it should be very fun.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to see what you have in store for the future.
You're welcome. Can I go now?
Okay, now you may remember me saying, but this is a relatively small series that I think will have a pretty big impact on the future of the internet horror genre. Now what do I mean by this? It's only got a couple thousand views, under 40,000 in total, which isn't small, but it's nothing like Baphomet's Coon, Mandela Catalog, or Local 58. Seriously, go check out their channel if you haven't yet. I really appreciate them taking the time to answer my questions, and it's just some pretty good content in general. But I think this series shows a transition between analog horror and digital horror. Digital horror, as I am considering it, is a subgenre of horror that uses elements of screen recordings, online websites, web games, etc. We see this in some parts of the series, but especially in Township.mp4 and the art style of the series. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I actually found the series on the Dreamcore wiki page, which Makes sense because this series does seem to draw a lot from that dreamcore aesthetic, which has a lot of elements of the early internet up to the early 2010s, I'd say. And a lot of that can kind of be considered digital horror. It definitely still mixes a lot with analog horror, which is why I say this is more of a transition and not really a full-fledged digital horror series. I also want to mention a video posted by the channel Hey Peter, how Hatsune Miku became a horror icon. I'll put a link to his video in the description, so go check it out. In his video, he mentions a trend on Twitter where people would draw Hatsune Miku in this style of different horror characters or aesthetics, a lot of which was stuff from the era of those weird for weird sake videos or games or just things that kids on the internet would find scary, which I know I kind of shat on earlier, the weird for weird sake stuff. But I mean, if it makes you feel something like fear or unease, that's a feat in itself. Now, I don't think the entirety of the late 2000s, early 2010s horror genre will come back.
I eat little babies.
But I think there will be a return of something like creepypastas or indie horror games, and whatever you call this.
Are you hungry? Why not have some Pringles?
But with more of a narrative to their stories, which gets me really excited because I have a lot of weird nostalgia for that type of content, and I would like to see it come back. I'm not going to get my hopes up too high because that is just a theory. An internet horror theory. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, you're a little weird. But hey, you're my kind of weird. See ya.